All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to 10 Practical Tips for Writing an Attention-Getting CV. I'm Jennifer Petoff, a Senior Program Manager for the Site Reliability Engineering team at Google here in the Dublin office. I'm joined today by Rebecca and Anam from our recruiting team here in Dublin. So let me tell you a bit about our objectives for this session today. Our goal is to share actionable tips about how to write a CV that, number one, is more likely to get the attention of a tech company's recruiting team. Number two, gives you the best chance of landing an interview for a technical internship or new grad position. And number three, makes a positive impression with impact in the 30 seconds to 1 minute that a recruiter will spend evaluating your CV. Don't you wish you had 30 minutes per candidate? So with that in mind, let's jump right in. And we will jump right in. Oh, sorry, backing it up.
So our first tip of the day is demonstrate that you can code. A sentence like, I achieved first class honors into Intro to Java. While it's great that it was first class honors, it doesn't really set you apart. Many of your classmates may be able to say something very similar. So demonstrate that passion. So I created an app in Java that shows locations around campus currently offering free food and link that to GitHub. That really shows me that you can code. Another example would be I won first place in the All-Ireland Coding Competition out of 36 teams participating. So again, I get an idea of the quantity and that you won first place. And finally, I was selected by my lecturer to tutor first-year students in Python based on my demonstrated coding ability in this language. I have no doubt at this point that you absolutely can code. You code in Java and you code in Python. So I'm much more likely to select you for an interview.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca.
So the second tip from us today is prove it to me. A sentence like, I have a keen interest in computer science doesn't really give us a lot of information about your real passion and any demonstrable examples. However, if you change your sentence to, I have a keen interest in computer science as demonstrated by volunteering for the Code for All Ireland open source project for 2 years, where I contributed 5K lines of checked-in code. That sentence tells me that you are able to code and we should definitely call you for an interview. Another example would be that you served as a Coder Dojo participant for 3 years and then mentor for 2 years. That's a really strong example and it will definitely set you apart from the others. Lastly, you could also write tutoring first-year students in Java through our student ACM chapter. Again, really good example, and it will prove it to me that you are, in fact, very interested in computer science.
Perfect. So tip number 3, what I like to call the so what test. So we often see things on CVs like, I'm an avid soccer player. I spent the summer attending bar at my uncle's pub, or spent the summer working as a cashier at Spar. If you're looking to get a technical internship, using your computer science or related degree, think about, so what? What does this add to your application? Instead, you might say, think about things that are relevant. I was elected as treasurer of NetSoc at my school. I was elected as treasurer of NetSoc, which required me to become certified as the systems administrator for the club. So once again, it shows related club activity and some of the skills that you generated along the way, like technical skills that you generated.
So our fourth tip is quantify the impact. CVs at Google are a little different. We very much want metrics, data, and numbers. So a typical sentence you might see on a CV is, I wrote an app that helps patients schedule appointments with the next available doctor. I'm left wondering a lot about that sentence. You could make it much more impactful by saying, I refactored code that lowered average latency from 800 to 500 milliseconds for an app that helps patients schedule appointments with the next available doctor. It's quantifiable and I know exactly how you did it. Another way would be, I created a database that allowed us to scale from 5,000 to 100,000 users when we launched an app that helps patients schedule appointments with the next available doctor. I'm now seeing some scale. And then a final version would be, I simplified the code for an app that helps patients schedule appointments with the next available doctor by removing 2,000 lines of code without losing functionality. You can see how much stronger that example is by merely including the information quantifying that impact.
Tip number 5 is, what's your differentiator? We usually see things like classes, Intro to Java, Computer Science 101, Advanced Math on people's CV. But what is that one thing that makes you a special snowflake? Sentences like, my third-year project won second prize out of 15 entries in XYZ competition. This statement not only shows your genuine interest in coding, but it also shows your passion and definitely makes you stand out. Another great example would be, I spend 15 hours per week at the university help desk assisting non-computer science students with hardware and software issues. This is something that you would be doing outside of your studying hours, so that again shows passion, and that's really important for us. Lastly, another great example is, I created a pizza ordering app in C++ that is now used by 500 students campus-wide. I think it's safe to say that not a lot of your colleagues can say the same thing, so that is definitely going to make you stand out.
Great, so some great examples there. Tip number 6, and I'm a huge ice hockey fan, so I love this simple bit of advice. Don't pad it. So don't add things to your CV just because. Like, make sure everything you're adding actually has value and makes you stand out and is a differentiator, like Anam was saying. So we often see things like, I'm proficient using Mac and Windows operating systems, or I have experience with Microsoft Office. Those are essentially table stakes. We pretty much assume that if you're studying computer science, you can do these things. And the fact, if you feel the need to say it, in some ways it raises a red flag, because we'd definitely be expecting much more. Great.
The 7th tip is style substance over style.
Of course.
I can say that no one at Google has gotten a job because of the format of their CV. So really concentrate on the content. We're not looking for fancy fonts. We're not looking for non-standard formats, images, colors. These are not what really stands out. We're looking at the content. So really keep that in mind. Don't fret over formatting.
Tip number 8 is, keep it short and sweet. We said it in the beginning of this session where we were talking about how recruiters are extremely busy, especially for big companies like Google. You probably have around 30 to 60 seconds to get their attention. We receive 75,000 applications on a monthly basis in Google. So again, it's really important to get your key points across in a single page, maximum 2. For somebody who's a new grad and is only adding the relevant information, there's no logical reason why your CV should be more than 2 pages long. So make sure that you are keeping it concise and very clear.
It's all about making the recruiters' jobs easier.
Yes. Definitely. So it's one more thing to remember is the only purpose of the CV is to get you the interview. The interview is what would get you the job.
Exactly. All right, this is one of my favorites. I love to travel, so the Tasmanian devil makes an appearance. The devil's in the details. So it's a really good idea as you're pulling together your CV to pay attention to those details. Read your CV line by line. Read it backwards. You ask someone that you trust to review your CV. You're looking for typos. You're looking for grammar errors, just general mistakes. Yeah, really watch out for and correct any typos that you or your reviewers actually find. Avoid using acronyms. Make sure you spell out anything that might not be in common use outside of your school or the job that you're working in. And finally, this is a simple one, but make sure your name and contact details are included, including your email and phone number. It's really frustrating when we see really good CVs and we have no way of knowing who it is or what their contact details are. This is surprising, but you have seen examples of this, right?
I have actually seen CVs without an email address, which makes it impossible to contact you.
Yes. And it's even better. You're trying to make the recruiter's job as easy as possible. So add your name to the file name. So as people might be passing your CV around to the hiring manager, it's very clear who it is and who that file is associated with.
I would recommend adding the year as well for your own reference. So when you go to revamp your CV, you know when you last touched it.
Perfect. No, that's great. Great advice, Rebecca. Oh, and test all the links on your CV and make sure your personal website works. So anything that you reference in that CV, make sure that we're able to get it. And if you're sending us the CV, say as an uploaded Google Doc, make sure the permissions are set so that we can actually access it and see all that great content that you've put together. Great. So lots of advice here. The devil is indeed in the details.
And our 10th tip is don't exaggerate. So you may feel pressure to make your work sound even better, but saying something like, I have expert level programming skills in C or C++, that's setting an expectation with an interviewer. They will expect expert level programming skills. Saying I design C++ programming language, only Bjarne can say that one. So again, unless you have actually created a language from scratch, don't exaggerate. Another example would be, I single-handedly created a program in C or C++ that solved world hunger and achieved world peace in less than 6 months with a user base of more than 2 billion. If this is true, we absolutely want to talk to you. If it's not true, please don't include it. You will be asked. Really, the engineers are only going to ask you about your experience in your CV, so don't exaggerate.
Great.
A winning formula which was shared by Laszlo Bock, who was our ex-VP of People Operations. Accomplish X as measured by Y by doing Z. Let's see that in working mode. So I have strong coding skills. So this sentence does not really give me any information about your accomplishments and your work and the results. Instead, writing something like, I lowered the latency of an app that gives the shortest distance between 2 points, taking into account real-time traffic. The lower the latency of an app bit tells me about what you accomplished. If you write, I lowered the average latency of an app that gives the shortest distance between 2 points, taking into account real-time traffic from 50 to 25 milliseconds initial load time. That gives me the measuring unit, and I can measure your accomplishments using that. Lastly, I lowered the average latency of an app that gives the shortest distance between 2 points, taking into account real-time traffic from 50 to 25 milliseconds initial load time by refactoring the code. 1,000 lines removed without the loss of functionality. That shows us what you actually did and how you achieved it, and hence that's the winning formula.
Exactly, and so as you're writing a CV, it's great to apply the different items, the things you're considering putting in there, apply this formula, you cannot go wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Excellent. And with that, we'll segue to some pre-recorded questions that we have. So which do Google value more, IT certification or a bachelor's degree? So Rebecca and Anam, would you?
Yeah, I can take that one. Great. So basically a bachelor's degree, I would say, in my opinion and my experience as a recruiter, because when you are studying computer science, for example, in college, you focus on a lot of different topics. So it's not just focused on one specific thing, and you learn fundamentals of algorithms, data structures, programming languages, networking. You touch up on a lot of things, as opposed to an IT certification, which might be more specialized and you won't necessarily learn those other stuff. And in Google, what we look for is people who are generalists as opposed to specialists. So I would say bachelor's degree.
Value in having your past projects on a site like GitHub. Plus 1 million for me. I don't know, Rebecca, did you want to weigh in on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're massive fans of engineers that have open source contributions. It's a great way of showing passion and also quantifying your contribution, because on GitHub, we can see how many lines of code, we can see what languages you've worked in, and overall, it shows that you've got passion, that it's not a 9-to-5 and it's not just college. It's something you're genuinely interested in. We often look at sites like GitHub to find top talent. So it's great to have it on your CV, and it's great to have it on GitHub, because we do go look there for the coding languages and relevant technology. So 100% absolutely, if you've got open source, any open source contributions as well, be it Stack Overflow, GitHub, any contributions, do include them.
Yeah, plus 1 million.
So I think next one is this.
Okay, in the order. Is it a disadvantage not having enough work placement internship experience? If so, what would you suggest one can do to overcome this?
So again, like I called out in the presentation, it's all about differentiating yourself from your peers. So like what makes you a special snowflake, and having placement experience, having experience outside of just sitting in classes and doing class related projects. I would say it's, yeah, internships and extra experience are definitely a plus. So I wouldn't kind of look at it the other way. Like I look at it as a glass is half full, like do this stuff and it's an advantage versus a disadvantage not having it. Things that you can do to overcome it, it's like getting involved in an open source project. There's like Code Academy and like other things where you can work on projects. Do you guys have other examples of things that would be helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. So being involved in a technical organization within college, so the example of NetSoc. So if I could see you were sysadmin, or even that you're a part of a technical group in college. Another great thing that we look for are things like coding competitions.
Yes.
So even if you don't place top, it shows that you're involved. If you place top, even better, make it quantifiable. But those are the kinds of extra things that, again, you don't have to have an actual role. You could do this in your spare time and it shows passion.
Yeah. Cool. I think that's good. I think we've addressed that one. Okay, we'll just hit done, no bother. Cool. What's next? As a second-year computer science student, how important are these extra out-of-college projects? I can see these being a huge part of a graduate application, but as an undergraduate, how much extra experience do you expect? So I think as a second year, I mean, having working in the clubs, tutoring other people, like those little extras, I think can help you get an internship opportunity. So I mean, we don't expect you to have an internship to get an internship, but just showing, again, what differentiates you from your peers. I mean, if you look at people studying at universities around Europe, people in Romania, Russia, et cetera, like a lot of them have been doing this stuff since they were like young children. So you're not just competing with people in Ireland, you're potentially competing with people from around Europe and the world. So I guess the more, like Coder Dojo and, tutoring people and like just different kinds of opportunities there, like it definitely helps. I think it's definitely important. Getting these kind of technical internships can be quite competitive.
Yeah.
Anything else to add there?
Any thoughts?
I think we're not looking for something really huge, like, oh, you did an internship with Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that. What we're looking for is, did you go above and beyond for your passion? If you're really interested in programming, did you do any coding competitions? Did you help your friends, come up to speed or something? So it's that little things that differentiate you from your peers, I think.
Yeah, good one.
Thanks.
Next up. So is it really a good idea to include references on a CV, especially from a number of years ago? And I'm going to defer to Rebecca and Anam on this one as well.
Perfect. So for Google, and I would imagine many major tech companies, we won't check references until we're at an offer stage. Quite commonly, you'll see references available upon request. We won't really look at the references until you're at that stage that you've already interviewed and we're moving towards an offer stage. And we will ask you specifically, who are your references? I think it is a good idea to mention references available upon request. Would you have any different take on that?
No, I agree, because we don't really look at references till the end anyway. So there's no harm to it. But they're asking, especially from a number of years ago. I think that's okay, unless they were your direct manager or somebody who would have a good insight on your work and would be able to give us a fair evaluation.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. Do you accept C# as a programming language? Once again, this is why I've brought Rebecca and Anam along.
Okay, so I think it depends, because we don't really, but we won't disregard you just on that basis. Like if you, for example, if you're proficient with C#, we would expect you to be able to pick up other languages. I think Java is quite similar to C#, so we would look for other data points, because I think that alone would probably not be enough for a lot of engineering teams in Google.
But for general software engineering, I've seen people be hired as C#, so it's not a deal breaker. Ideally, it's not really one of our core languages, which makes sense. So if, again, you can show that flexibility. So if I see someone who only does C#, ASP.NET, it's going to be really hard to find relevant projects. It's not a deal breaker, but having some fluency or openness to C, C++, Python, and Java is a better indicator that you're comfortable with Unix, Linux systems.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right, next question. We've got lots of great questions. Keep them coming. So what particular attributes of computer programming does Google look for in a new intern? So languages. Also, do you guys like to view a recruit's GitHub account? So we've answered some of this already. So plus $1 million for GitHub. Again, it's showing examples of code, most definitely. Let's see. So, and I think we talked about the languages already. So again, the ideal languages are C, C++, Python, and Go. And then this is less so in Dublin, but like Java is also one of our core languages. Great. Was there anything else in there? I think that was the main.
The only other piece I can see is about looking on social media. So we wouldn't look anywhere kind of like Facebook, but we will look at technical websites. And what's a really great indicator is if you have your own blog. So we get quite excited if we see somebody who has their own technical blog. Again, it shows the passion and we can see your coding snippets. So not all social media, but we would look at things like GitHub. And like I said, if you have a blog, that's a very good signal.
And I think it's like, don't go just slapping up a blog with one post and stuff. I mean, I think it's everything. Have you done it for a number of years and what months or years? Cool. All right. Thank you. All right. Here's another one. Are long gaps in employment education history a red flag for employers, and do they need to be explained in a CV? So once again, my recruiting friends, what would you say to that?
So I think I wouldn't really disregard somebody on that basis, because I would like to know the context behind it. Obviously, if a person has the relevant skills and the relevant experience, I would be open to talking to them. That's not necessarily a red flag in terms of Google, I think, because we tend to look for your relevant experience and not how many years of experience you have. So I don't know if you have anything to add.
I think anytime you can make it really clear. So I think a very frequent gap we'll see is people have gone traveling for a year. So even putting in travel to Australia for 1 year, it helps us fill in that gap. And it's very normal for students. I think that's probably the most common gaps you see at a student level is people have gone traveling. Not a problem at all. If there's a gap, we will normally just chat to you about it. If it's something you're comfortable sharing, like traveling, feel free to include that.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Should I put college assignments and projects on GitHub or just limit it to side projects? I don't know, right? Like I mean, it's great to see samples of the actual code regardless of the context. But do you guys have a thought
I wouldn't
on that?
limit it. Personally, if I had the code, if I had the code to put out there, I would host it. We see that quite frequently. Hello World, and you'll see it's quite clear that it is somebody's college project, but that's not a negative at all. You took the time to put it out there, and you're sharing it with the world, which is actually a really great thing.
Sharing the world's information and making it universally accessible and useful, like we do here at Google. Let's see. Does having a role at Google in any form previously impact the decision much? So something in a non-heavy programming role. So, I mean, I think you're just judged based on the position you're applying for. So if you did an internship in a non-technical position, or if you worked at Google before, do you have I'm going to cough again?
No worries. Not a negative. I've seen a number of engineers start in slightly business, slight engineer roles and move into site reliability as an example. I wouldn't see it as a negative. In fact, I would think good culture fit, that you're used to the pace. I absolutely wouldn't see it as a negative if you had previously worked at Google.
Great. So is it a large disadvantage to have a degree level 8 in something like software development instead of the same level of degree in computer science? I mean, I'm going to let you guys mostly answer this, but I was going to say, like, it's pretty much can you code or not code. Like, I think it's your skill set rather than the degree that you have. But ladies,
I think the key to the Google interview process is it focuses heavily on algorithms and data structures. And you can learn that in informatics, in computer science, in software development. That would be the only key piece, and it requires practice more so than anything. So absolutely, I wouldn't disregard based on degree type. It's more so, can I see that you know how to code? And will you be comfortable with algorithms and data structures? So go to the workshop because they'll actually cover a lot of that there too.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca. How important is LinkedIn?
Very important,
That's
in my
great.
opinion, because obviously I understand that if some for students, in their final years or second years, they probably feel that it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a LinkedIn profile because you won't have a lot to add there. But I think it makes us as recruiters, it makes it easier for us to find you on time, and just make sure that you're making a profile that has the relevant information, such like Jennifer mentioned in her earlier slides. Don't include, things like that you're working as an accountant or whatever if you are looking for a software engineering role. I'm not saying that you don't learn some really important skills in those jobs, you do, but it's just not relevant to what you are aiming for. So just make sure you're including your degree and what subjects you've covered, what's your score, like grades even. I think that could definitely help students with no experience.
And I often look at the skills matrix at the bottom. I would recommend list them from your strongest skill to your least strongest skill, because that's how we'll read it. So if you put C at the top, I'm going to assume that is your strongest coding language, but that would be something we look at occasionally as well to get a feel for the areas that you're interested in.
The other thing I would say is just from your perspective, not like it's what's in it for you versus what's in it for us. Like LinkedIn is also a very useful networking tool.
Yeah.
So as you're looking for internships, as you're looking for positions, like being able to reach out to people in your network or through people in your network to people that are 1 degree away can be actually helpful. Like it's more like you're no longer just a piece of paper coming into a applicant system. You know someone who's looking at your CV and is passing it along to the right people. So it can be a really useful just networking tool.
Absolutely.
So I'd say why not?
Yeah.
Google actually found me on LinkedIn 8 years ago.
Nice.
So
I think that's how I was found as well.
really, so it's
Yeah.
so
Me too.
Yeah.
everybody.
Yes.
So it's recruiters love it, and then it's great from a networking perspective. Done with that one. So what is Google's view on mature graduates? Is this a positive or negative? I mean, neutral in my opinion, right? It's all about the skills that you have, right? Like we're age blind, if you will.
Yeah.
No, I completely 100% agree. That does not affect the process whatsoever. It's all about what you have learned in your degree or from your previous experiences, and not about how old you are. So it doesn't, I won't worry about that.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you for asking. Let's see. In applying for a job with Google, does having Oracle certificates for Java and SQL help?
I think this comes back to Anam's question earlier that she answered about IT certifications. The certifications are neutral, unfortunately. I would say it's probably neutral. For the most part, we're not using SQL databases. We're using MySQL, NoSQL, Cassandra, MongoDB. Those are the types of technologies that we would look for more so. It's not a negative at all. Again, what would your take? It's neutral.
Yeah, it's neutral. I mean, if you did learn some, a particular technology in Java using that certificate, it's not it won't hurt you. But I think it's more about what you have learned in terms of application basis and what fundamentals knowledge you have, as opposed to having knowledge about one aspect of Java or SQL. As an overall fundamental knowledge would be more beneficial.
Great. Cool. Let's see. And I think we've answered this one already, but in case Ryan came a little bit late, we'll say it again. So what technology and languages would you think are most important to know for future graduates? Python, right? Actually, so it's C, C++, Python, Go, and then Java, and then like Linux internals or whatever. Like, are there other things that you would say? Because these are technologies and languages. So systems engineering, like for the kinds of roles that we have here in Dublin, is helpful for sure. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add there?
Networking.
Yeah,
it's an advantage. Yeah, if you have it, and not just the high level Linux and Unix administration stuff, but if you have any lower level experience or even interest in command line and kernel programming and things like that, that could be useful as well.
And the other languages that we occasionally see, again, as Anna mentioned, so Go, some of your scripting, so Perl. Ideally, coding languages are a bit stronger because you can do more, but we will look at some scripting as well.
Yeah, great. Next, so many questions, I love it. I'm currently doing a level 8 in computer programming and gaming development. Would the gaming moniker impact your decision in a choice between potential candidates? Discuss.
We don't have as many projects in gaming. I know in the US we are starting to look at some gaming profiles, so we are moving more towards that space. It's not a negative, it just depends if that's the only thing. So if we see people have made like Xbox games and the only thing they've ever done is gaming, it actually feels wrong to take them away from that industry, because you want to find people who are interested in the kind of work that we do. So that's more so how I would approach it. I want to make sure that I'm making the right decision and matching skill sets. And if you're only doing gaming and I'm looking at back-end infrastructure, I'm not sure you'd actually like that role.
Yeah.
But we do have some roles in the States.
But the other question would be like, because I'm not actually, I don't know a lot about game development, I guess, but like, are there circumstances where you would use some of our key coding languages to do game development, or does it tend to be very specialized formats and languages and stuff?
I think it depends. There's several aspects to game development. It could be that they're designing the infrastructure or they're designing the user interface. So it really depends on what aspect they are focusing on. And I think, like Rebecca said, most important thing for us as recruiters is to find you the role that you would actually enjoy, as opposed to just, you know, finding your role that we are looking for, you know. So it's more about what you want to do, and we try to match the skill set according to that.
Because Trevor's question, it sounds like, so it's computer programming and gaming development. So you know, I'm not sure if that's if gaming is the sole focus, or you know, he's learning some gaming and sort of more general computer programming concepts. But I think it's about demonstrating how your experience applies to the job that you're applying for. So you know, did it involve a key coding language? Like, was there a, you know, algorithmic component to it? Like, there's, you know, so I guess it kind of depends, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Great, thank you. If you secure a placement at Google Dublin, does this give you the opportunity to work in Google's other offices in other parts of the world? So for placement, I'm assuming you mean for an internship opportunity. So I think your placement opportunity would typically be in one location. There may be travel opportunities. So for example, we had our intern summits this summer in Zurich. So all the interns actually went to Zurich. Our STEP interns actually went to London for a summit. So there might be some limited travel opportunities. When you're hired full-time at Google, you know, for example, I started at our headquarters in Mountain View, California, but I've been working in Dublin for the past 5 years. So when you're here full-time, you know, you can definitely use your starting location, you know, as a starting point, and who knows where in the world you'll end up. In fact, I've actually learned recently we have graduates from Irish universities pretty much around the world, everywhere from Mountain View, Tokyo, you know, all over Europe. So, you know, the sky is the limit, I guess, more from a full-time perspective. Again, internships are typically limited to a specific office. Although we have had people, you know, we have a couple of interns from Irish universities now in Zurich, one in London. So you know, people have done placement opportunities in other offices besides Dublin. Although we love having you here, we have a bunch of folks here as well. Great. All right. How long? Let's see. How long code does look good for you on GitHub? Will you look only at big projects? So how much code is worth putting in GitHub is how I'm interpreting that. Any thought on like the minimum critical size?
I don't think there is a criteria for that. I think what we would look for is how many people, you know, favorited your project or your code, and how many people forked. I think there's a forking element in GitHub. So we would look at that, and we would look at how many people starred your code, things like that, and how active you were in a, you know, let's say last 6 months even. So that's the kind of stuff we would look for, as opposed to reading how many lines of code there actually are.
Yeah, and we also look for how many repositories as well. So positive signs would be projects in multiple languages as well. So not necessarily how much code, but showing that flexibility. Just one project doesn't give us as much to go on. Again, not a negative, it still is a plus compared to just a regular CV with no open source contributions.
Fantastic, thank you. For people who are going into their final year, when is a good time to apply for an internship or graduate position? Would you start as an intern first and then proceed to a graduate role, or straight into a graduate role? So I would say just your chances of getting a full-time opportunity are probably better if you've done an internship here or somewhere else. Like, so having some placement experience, I think, definitely helps in the full-time process. you'll have a little bit more of a sense of what to expect in an interview, be better equipped to deal with some of the coding questions, etc. To point out as well, our internship program is it's open to people that will be going back to school afterwards. So you can't graduate and then do an internship. Mm-hmm. So if you finish up your undergraduate degree, you would either apply for a full-time opportunity, or if you're going to graduate school, say to pursue a master's or PhD, you could do an internship then. But again, the key criteria is like you're going back to uni afterwards. And then what's a good time to apply? So I would say in the autumn, probably like the late autumn. What do you guys think for full-time positions?
Oh, for full-time positions, all year round. For internships, October is when we open the recs. Get in there quickly, so you have all the projects that are available. That would be my take. For full-time roles, there's no particularly. We're hiring all year round.
Back to us, yay! And
Perfect.
I should have probably just hit and done on that one, but
Don't worry.
We'll stick with the protocol.
Right here.
More questions. Okay, cool. When is too early to start applying for internships? Does Google only take on third-year students, or would students in earlier years? You have a specific internship program for first and second-year students. The recruiting process for that takes place a little later. It's called our STEP internship program. So it's the summer trainee experiential.
I think it's engineering practicum
or something. Yeah, my brain is a little addled with this cold. Apologies, folks. We do have our STEP program for first and second year students. So that the recruiting process for that will happen like November, December kind of time frame. And with the STEP program, it's pretty cool. We actually pair up to first or second year students or second year students. So you're basically tag teaming on a project. You'd have two mentors that would be working with you and supporting you during the project. And again, it's kind of a feeder pool into our classic intern program. Now, if you're a superstar second year, like we would certainly consider you for the classic intern program, but it's more typical, I would say, for first and second year students to apply for the STEP program, and then third year students for our internship program. That should be good, right? I think that's a good answer. Sure. Could you run through the typical layout of an interview at Google? So for internship opportunities, there would typically be 2 interviews. They would happen either on the phone or in person at our offices in Dublin. And again, they will be very technically focused. You'd actually be asked to get up to the whiteboard and write code, essentially. I think the way to prepare for that, it's like reviewing data structures, algorithms, sort of basic concepts. Make sure you know your coding syntax so that you can actually get up to the whiteboard and code. Mm-hmm. For a full-time opportunity, it's a little bit more intensive. So there would be, I think, a phone screen to determine, do you kind of meet the minimum criteria? Or there might actually be a preliminary recruiter call, then a phone screen. Then if all goes well, you'd be invited on site for 4 more interviews, I think. 5 more interviews. Okay, cool. And then there's a whole like hiring committee process, etc. That takes a little while for the decision to be made. Anything else you'd add about the typical layout of an interview?
The only tip that I would give about getting ready for the interview is there are a ton of coding websites out there, like Interview Cake. There's also Top Coder. I think practice is the main piece. The difference between a great candidate and somebody who's medium does come down to practice, because it's coding without a compiler. And people really don't code without a compiler. And you're also expected to talk out loud while you're coding. And that, again, is very strange. Nobody really codes on a whiteboard talking out loud. So I think that really does require that practice. So that would be the biggest tip. Look online, and there's tons of websites to help.
Great, sounds good. Thank you, Patrick. The technical support roles within Google, like IT support, need as much coding experience as you've mentioned, as you primarily mentioned software and site reliability engineering roles. So this would be like ITRP, I think. Do you guys have context on that? I think coding is required.
Yes.
But is it?
There are very few technical roles at Google that do not require coding. Would you know any off the top of your head non-coding tech roles?
TSE, there's a technical solutions engineering role, which is basically about your
skills with Linux and Unix, networking, maybe a little bit of scripting, but it's not a deal breaker. And I think there's other roles within that job family, which is more client facing. And I think for the one that you were mentioning, ITRP, it's basically our residency program. I know you said don't use acronyms, but I'm
sorry, I just did. I'm sorry, I'm making my own rules, but I'm not writing a CV.
Yeah, so I think that particular role also requires you to have some coding experience, maybe not as much as the software engineering role would require, but definitely.
And I think for roles like that, like for the IT support roles as well, it's kind of a combination of your technical and problem solving skills. You know, so some coding, maybe not as much, but then it's also your customer experience kind of skills. Like, are you good with people? Like, or are you like the people in the IT crowd? Have you tried turning it off and on again? Like the roll your eyes, frustrated. You know, so you want people that are good with less tech savvy folks, basically, for those
and
positions.
A big plus for that type of role is any experience. So even in college, we do look for, you know, did you do the help desk at your school? Have you been a technical point of contact at any point? And that is a real big plus.
Definitely. How many places are typically available? So I'm not sure if this is with respect, I'm assuming this is for the algorithms workshop or the internship program. Like, I'm gonna take a guess here. I would just say I can't give an exact number in terms of interns that we hire every year, but it's many, right? Like, so in the tens of interns, we hire, like, so for placements, we hire lots and lots of interns from around Europe. Like, again, they're not all from Ireland. We hire, you know, we're looking for the best talent wherever we can find it.
Absolutely.
But obviously we have a big presence here in Dublin, so really want to see you guys succeed. And you know, again, if an internship opportunity at Google is something that you're particularly interested in, like, you know, we're looking for you. Sounds good. Let's see, next one. Do Google like to see you have worked a lot of data structures and algorithms and have a keen interest in them? Yes. Right. So yeah, I think the answer to that is yes. So yeah, because again, I think our interviews focus on data structure and algorithms and, you know, problem solving around that, using code to kind of implement solutions. So yes,
very much so.
And I think as well, like the coding competitions, like the All Ireland coding competition that they do down at Cork every year. Like we've been a sponsor for the last couple of years. Those are great. Like all the problems are based on, they're typical like algorithms type questions, and we think it's great when people participate and do really well in those competitions.
Definitely.
Great. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Ronan. So what do you recommend to do as a final project to stand out in Google's eyes? Something in Python, C++, C++, or Go.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, kind of choosing your language wisely.
Yeah.
And then
based on the icon, I can see you're maybe involved with Debian. So if you're looking at the Unix Linux side and open source, that's a really great option as well.
Yeah. And something that would demonstrate your problem solving skills. Like maybe you made a process better or an app better, something like that. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think it matters other than like demonstrating your coding skills and showing off what you've learned. Thank you. Let's see. Do extracurricular activities, for example, the Gashka, impact your decision when recruiting? Do you know what that is?
I do know. It's an Irish award.
Oh, cool. Okay.
It's nice to see googliness, so it doesn't really impact our decision. For that, I would be putting it under hobbies or extracurricular activities. It's not going to be something we make our decision, but it does show we're always looking for googly people, so don't be evil, people that show our values. And certain extracurricular activities can demonstrate that if you're volunteering and doing things like that. Typically, it won't be a major factor in our decision.
Putting us on the spot. That's good. Thank you. What is the most important section of a CV? Deferring to my recruiting friends.
I think your experience, what have you actually done in your projects or any work experience that you had, like Jennifer said, you know, show us and demonstrate how you solved a problem and what skills you used to solve the problems and what was the result. So just something that is, tangible and something that we can actually quantify as opposed to guess. So I think for me, experience is the most important section.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree.
Great. And are you guys still doing okay on time? Because we're almost at the hour, but let's see if we can answer a few more questions since we've got an avid group of questioners. This is great. We appreciate the engagement. Does Google have positions for embedded programmers, electronic engineers? Thoughts on that?
I think electronic engineering, we might have roles in our data center operations. I think that is the only place where I've seen them actively looking for those degrees. However, we have also hired people with those degrees within site reliability engineering or even software engineering in some rare cases. So as long as you're able to code in the languages and you have that background, then we would definitely be open to speaking to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Ian. For a graduate CV, what would you like to see more? More text describing projects and subjects studied, or should we just keep it simple, stupid? Okay, so I guess that question is more like the detail. And I would say, again, you need enough detail to demonstrate the principles that I showed during the presentation. Like, what is it that you actually did? What was the impact of what you did? Like, how do you demonstrate that you can actually code? I mean, keeping it simple and saying like, I can code, like that's too simple because anybody can say that, but like you need to actually demonstrate your experience. So I think more words is fine as long as you're demonstrating those key
I think if you're following that format that Jen mentioned earlier with the XYZ format, the text will naturally happen if you're describing your projects in full.
Yeah, and I think that's good. Let's just revisit that again.
I thought that was really great.
And I'm hoping it's coming back again. Hopefully the slides are visible now. Okay, so it's the winning formula again. If you frame it as accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z, that is the winning formula. Great. And I'll go back if you want to go back to, or actually I'll just do it since I've got the mouse. Yeah. I have the bridge. Let's see. Do you conduct technical and or group interviews for internship recruitments? And I recognize Tracy's name, one of my points of contact from one of, I think, WIT, if I recall. Hi, Tracy. Let's see. So do you conduct technical or group interviews? So technical, yes. So you will be asked to stand up and code at the whiteboard. Group interviews, no.
Once again, this has been 10 practical tips for writing an attention-getting CV. We're looking forward to seeing your CVs for internship and new grad applications in the next coming months. Thanks very much.
Good luck.